What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Smoke and Meteoras, the podcast where we go beyond the highlights and talk about the moments that really matter. I am your host, Marissa, and this week I am joined by none other than the Suplex Sweetheart Isana. Welcome on. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful today. I am fantastic, even.
Glad to hear it. So, we start this show the same way every week, and that is with this question. What is the dumbest thing that you have done for wrestling?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Oh, man. I've done a lot of dumb things. Not up to and including just being a wrestler, because Lord knows I have CTE. Dumbest thing I've done for wrestling? Probably driven 2 hours to Holyoke, Massachusetts to go to a Quackenbush seminar and took a left turn and got T-boned.
Oh,
that was pretty stupid. Still did the seminar, though. My car got towed, and I was like, I got my stuff. Let's do this.
So do you feel the stupidest thing would be getting into the accident and still going to the seminar?
Yeah. It was, I had like a huge egg on my head because my gear bag, I had parked, and then I was like, I don't like this parking spot, so I want to go to another spot. So I got back in my car, but my gear bag, I already taken my gear bag out, so I just threw it in the passenger seat. So the gear bag, when I got hit, like hit me in the head. And then like I took the left, and I saw the car coming as soon as I started turning. I was like, oh no. So I kind of like threw myself towards the car. So it, like because I knew I was going to so I didn't hit my head on the glass of the window. But my thigh got whacked really hard. So I had this huge bruise on my thigh and this big egg on my head from my gear bag. And I still did the seminar. I should have just gone home.
But what do you think you were feeling that like made you make the decision to stay?
Well, it was kind of a screw it moment. Like, I was like, well, I'm here. I have my stuff. My car was totaled, so like it's like I was gonna need to. I established that I had a place to stay that night with Judge Chambers, and I remember running up the stairs, going like, Judge, I just got into a car accident. Can I stay with you tonight? He's like, yes. And I was like, all right, let me go tell the police. And then I run back downstairs, and then I come back up, and I'm apologizing to Quackenbush for being late to his seminar. And he's like, you were the one in the car accident? I was like, yeah. He was like, it's okay.
It's okay, but why are you here?
Yeah. You want to do this? Yeah, let's do it.
So, going through with all of that, what was something that you learned doing that?
Well, I learned how to do a Cazador arm drag. I remember that. I also learned that I'm willing to do just about anything for wrestling. I am willing to literally like not let anything stop me, be it my car getting totaled, and or everything going up, like everything going fucky. And I'm still so dedicated to wrestling. I'm basically married to it at this point that I would just be like, you know what, we're still doing this. And it was a really fun seminar.
So let's rewind and go back to the beginning, before the gear, the entrances, or the bookings. Who were you when wrestling first found you? So what drew you to wrestling in the first place?
So I love this question because 99% of the people are going to say, oh, I've been a fan since I was a kid. Like, I watched it with my parents. I hated wrestling when I first saw it. Like, unfortunately, my first experience with wrestling was seeing Rikishi do the stink face. And I remember there was a boy in 5th grade that was fine. And he was a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin mark. And I love telling the story. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to watch wrestling and I'm going to see what this is all about. And maybe we could talk about it. And then I turn on the TV, and like the channel that wrestling was on didn't come in very well because we still had like we lived in a valley and it was still analog TV, so like service was terrible. And so I get to the channel and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch this, and I just see Rikishi giving someone the stink face, like no context, just Rikishi's giant ass in someone's face, and I went, that's enough of that, and I just turned off the TV. And then I used to joke that like wrestling was soap operas for men and all this, which it kind of is. I'll give it that.
I'll agree with that.
But it wasn't until 2011. I was at a party for one of my friends, and her boyfriend is a wrestler, Crimson Alchemia. He was a boyfriend at the time. And her Crimson and Sean Leader were talking about this big match they were going to have the next day. It was a barbed wire ladder match at RWA, and I was like, well, I've got to see this. So incredibly hungover, I crawl into this tiny hole in the wall in North Providence called The Force, and I watched indie wrestling for the first time, and I was instantly hooked. I was like, this is so cool, because like TV wrestling is like, especially at the time I was watching it in like the early, the Ruthless Aggression era, when the first time I saw it. Actually, it might have even been the end of, it was really the Ruthless Aggression era, really. But it was very much like big, meaty men, and like Vince was still obviously very much involved in the booking, and he likes his men big and meaty. And it was like these oversized, impossible to associate myself with people, like either these tiny slinky blondes for the divas, or these big meaty men. And I was like, I could care less about these people. But then I saw independent wrestling, where these are like people that I can not only approach, but I can identify with. Like, they're real people that are gonna go home and go to bed and then wake up and go to a job the next day, and they're doing superhuman things and doing crazy stuff. I was like, this is what I want. This is what I want. So I was instantly hooked. I started doing ringside photography immediately. I think I went that show that I went to with the barbed wire ladder match, I brought my camera and I took pictures that very show. And then eventually I got up to doing like ringside stuff instead of just from my seat. But it was literally a matter of like 2 or 3 shows, and I was already like gung-ho about doing ringside photography. And then eventually I started training when one of my friends was like, hey, you should try training. And she ended up blowing out her knee and never made it. But I blew out my knee and I made it.
So did you always kind of picture yourself doing it once you saw it on an independent level, or did it kind of like progress over time?
It took 2 years for me to go from this is really cool, I want to be involved, to, well, sort of 2 years, because I definitely knew I wanted to be involved in it pretty early on. I just didn't think I was going to become a wrestler. I figured maybe I'd be like a commissioner or some kind of like, I did a stint as a commissioner for RWA. And then once I started going and branching out a bit more and like shooting pictures at different companies, I was like, but at that time, like I didn't have an athletic bone in my body. I still kind of don't. But the only sport I played in high school was chorus. Yep. So I didn't think I was going to be able to hack it. And then it took until, I was already on a weight loss journey and a fitness journey, independent of wrestling, around that time. And then I got to the point where I was like, maybe I can do this. I started getting a bit more involved. But it definitely took about 2 years for me to get to the point where I was like, all right, I'm actually going to be able to do this and start training.
So when you did decide to train, did people support you right away, or was it something a lot of people were kind of dismissive of?
Well, I mean, the people in wrestling were super supportive of it because they all knew me. They all loved me at that point. I was a firm member of RWA at that point. The people outside of wrestling were a little less thrilled. My mother still refuses to say that I wrestle. She says that I perform. That is her way of coping with the fact that because my mother is absolutely a pacifist, hates violence of any sort, even professional wrestling style violence, and so she's still doesn't 10 years later, and she's still not prepared for that. But my dad was really supportive of it. His brother had been an amateur wrestler and like did really well in high school and college. And dad loved wrestling when he was younger. He thought it was really cool. Dax Calhoun was his favorite. And so he thought it was pretty cool that I was doing it, and would eventually end up coming to my shows. But initially it was very mixed bag.
So, were you confident walking into training, or was it a bit intimidating at first?
Oh, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I remember, like, because when there's a picture from my first day of training of me locking up with there was 4 girls in that class. It was myself, T Phoenix's sister-in-law, Melissa, and then another girl whose name I cannot remember anymore, and my friend Heather is the one that got me into trying to go training. It was like her 3rd or 4th class. And so there we are, and this is back when JT Dunn was training at the Chop Shop 1 in Providence. And I come in, and I'm 250 pounds of pure flab, like no muscles really to speak of. And I tried my best. I was terrible. But there was some things I could do because I had done gymnastics when I was much younger, like when I was a child. So like rolls, stuff like that, I could get down for the most part. But taking my first bumps, I definitely concussed myself in my first class.
Jeez.
You tuck your head. But it was really intimidating. It really, really was. It was super scary. I was in a class with people like Nick Marchand, Mike Grassa, all these people that are going to go on to be superstars. And at the time, were all very athletic. They were all very young still, so they were doing all this crazy stuff. Not that Mike Grassa doesn't still do crazy stuff.
You're not wrong.
So it was very intimidating. I didn't want to look stupid, and then I kind of had to accept the fact that in order to excel at something, you have to fail at it many times before you can be good at it. And that was kind of a bitter pill to swallow because I'm a perfectionist, but I knew that I had to keep trying. And I did. My original gimmick when I first debuted was the Perseverance Princess, because I persevered through so much in training, and that kind of became my whole thing until eventually became the Suplex Sweetheart.
So with wrestling kind of around that time being a very male predominant sport, did you feel you had to work a little harder just to be taken seriously?
Yes and no. I will say that everyone in all the classes I've ever been in have all been very supportive. Guys, girls, it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously some outliers, some people just don't like me, but that's a personal thing, not a gendered thing.
There are some people out there that do just don't like female wrestling.
There are. I've heard from them.
I'm like, we know exactly one person that I was.
Oh yeah. But there's definitely you are held to a bit of a higher standard being a woman. Like, especially, and it is a bit harder just physically. So there's something like, guys naturally have a lot more upper body strength. And so certain like up and overs, or some of the presses and stuff are just genuinely harder for women to do until you've trained enough that your muscles are strong enough to do them. And guys are just like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. And I'm like, I'm gonna need a couple months. Like, let me get in the gym and bench. Especially when I was first starting out, it was really difficult. But everyone was super supportive of me. When I first started, I remember JT taking me aside and saying, if anyone is, in any way predatory towards you, or if there's any anything, any kind of misconduct, tell me right away. We will not stand for it. And it ended up that I was more of the sexual harasser in the sense that I kept cracking jokes. We eventually got to the point where anytime any innuendos were said, I was like, that's a Tuesday class, because we had classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. So my classes were Tuesdays. But it really was a supportive atmosphere, and we used to do these really intense cardio circuits. Like, you'd run around the ring so many times, and then you do burpees, or you jump, do in and outs, and then you'd have to like body slam the 120 pound dummy and stuff like that. And the first couple times I did it, I was failing, and I like to the point where I was just sobbing in the ring, and then like everyone would gather around and like cheer me on. So that was really awesome. Like, even though I was struggling, they were still like believed in me.
What was something that you were most afraid of in the beginning?
Failure, absolutely. I was terrified that I was going to embarrass myself. And now I kind of embrace the fact that embarrassing myself is fine. And you know what? We can all have a good laugh about it. My general rule now is it's okay to fail as long as I don't hurt anybody.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. But I was definitely terrified of failure. That's something that's always been with me my whole life. I still remember one of my high school teachers saying, Liz, you're so afraid of failing that you've never even tried. So learning how to fail and get back up on that horse was a big thing for me.
So let's move on a little bit and talk about coming up on the independent scene. So what did it feel like walking into the locker rooms early on in your career?
Depending on the locker rooms, it could be a bit intimidating. Especially once I started branching out. I still remember the first, like, at RWA, we were all family. That was easy. But I remember the very first show I did for Mike Baker for House of Bricks. That was like, I'm meeting people I've never met before. I'm trying not to piss anyone off. I'm trying to have a good match. That was really scary. I mean, I still knew probably about half of the people at House of Bricks at that point, but there were definitely people that were like, I barely knew, people that I didn't know at all. And that was a bit intimidating. I definitely think that doing the ringside photography helped, because more places had heard of me because of the photography. So I was welcomed with like, oh, hey, it's the photographer chick. Now you're wrestling? That's cool. But it was definitely a bit intimidating, especially when I'm going to some shows where I know almost no one. If I remember going down to New York a bunch for Warriors of Wrestling. They did a lot of really awesome seminars, and I went down there with like one person that I knew. Sometimes Davey Ann would take me, or I'd go with the Sea Stars. And then Eventually I ended up just starting to go on my own to these seminars, but it was definitely intimidating walking in and be like, I know absolutely no one here, and I have to now make friends with these people.
So, being a woman on the independent scene, did you feel like you had to prove yourself faster than most men do?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say the biggest thing that I faced wasn't necessarily proving myself in ring. It was more proving myself out of the ring. There are obviously a certain subset of women that will get into wrestling for one reason, and it's not the wrestling. And I had to prove to everyone pretty quickly that that wasn't me. That I wasn't just a ring rat that was doing it just to hook up with the wrestlers. I had to show everyone that I was in love with the wrestling. And I managed to do that pretty early on, luckily. And word got around that I wasn't someone to mess with and to try and, I mean, obviously there's been many have tried. Some have succeeded. Most have failed. But it was really a big question of, is this chick in it because she loves wrestling, or is she just in it for the men? And I feel like I've established a reasonably good reputation of being in it for the wrestling at this point.
Were there ever moments where you felt overlooked or underestimated?
A lot. It's definitely hard being a woman in wrestling, even now. There are obviously a lot more shows. Like when I first started, a lot of the shows didn't have a women's match. It was, a special attraction match, like a steel cage or a women's match. But I came in around the time of the women's revolution situation. And so I kind of skated by the worst of it. Because I debuted in 2016, so that was around the time that everything started changing. There are still some places that like I wrestled a lot of intergender matches, just because there weren't a lot of women at RWA. I even had a couple at House of Bricks and Mike Baker's not a big fan of intergender, but nor are his fans. But there was just no one else for me to wrestle. So I would have to have intergender matches, and I honestly prefer intergender matches. I feel like I put out better product when I'm beating up the boys. Because I'm like, if I hit him a little hard, it'll be okay. I won't break anything on him, I don't think. Whereas with girls, sometimes I'm like, oh, she's tiny. I don't want to actually hurt her. So it definitely, like, there's a lot of shows still that won't do intergender at all. Or if they do any sort of intergender, it's like a mixed standard WWE style mixed tag where, like, if the woman comes in, the other woman has to come in, the man has to tag out immediately. So that's a bit frustrating. And then also just the fact that, like, there's just not as many opportunities. On a standard indie show, you'll have 8 to 10 matches, and chances are only one of them, maybe 2 if you're lucky, will be women's matches. If you're really lucky, you might have a really progressive promoter, and they may do a women's tournament, and then you get 3 matches on a show. But it's still very much a male-dominated industry, and there's still a lot of just not a lot of opportunities. And I had to really push. A great example is NCW. They didn't have women's wrestling, and it was a running joke between JC and I. I was like, "Hey, JC, when are you gonna book me? When are you gonna book me?" And that happened for about a year. before he was like, you know what? I will. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And now NCW has a thriving women's division.
One of the largest that I can think of in New England.
Yeah. And it's bringing fans in, I think, to see women's action. I think it's done a lot for the NCW product, and I'm super happy that JC decided to do that. And I'm super happy that I was able to kind of be a catalyst for it.
And I've been going to NCW shows back in the day for as far back as I can remember. And even I remember the shows where women weren't a thing.
Nope. Yeah. No. I believe the gap was 7 years since the last women's match they had at all, or a match with a woman in it. So it was a 7-year span where they had just men's matches.
I can't even remember when they had a women's match before you had came along either. So it might have even been before my time.
Yeah. And you've been going to NCW for a long time. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going to indie shows for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I remember, when I first started going to shows, I was only, 7.
Mm.
And I think it took up until I was, maybe 11 or 12 to finally see, a first women's match in person.
Yeah.
And I'm almost positive it was Natalia or Jillian and Mercedes Martinez, if I'm remembering it correctly.
That sounds about right. What a match.
This
I wish I could have seen that.
I was going to say this. I want to say it was back any CW days when Sabotage and Pride were in a feud for years. But that was my first introduction of women's wrestling, and I fell in love with it, and I still advocate for you guys so fucking much.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. You've been a great advocate for it, and I even now I still see people being like, "Hey, it's 2026. Let's get more women's matches." I think Roxanne Fury just made a post about it the other day, and it's definitely still a thing where we have to remind bookers hey, you can have more than one women's match on a show. It's not like you can only have just the one and just to say you did it.
It's getting to a point where I've been super selective with shows. I'm like, if I don't see at least one woman's name on that card, I'm not going.
Yeah. And this, I mean, we're definitely doing a lot better. I know Lucky Pro brings in women a lot. That was one of the reasons I wanted to work for them initially. They were one of the indies that I really wanted to work for because they had just such a flourishing women's roster.
And they usually have about 2 women's matches per show at this point.
Yeah, 2 to 3 at this point. Yeah. And then also NECW did a lot with the WWW. Sheldon was always a big fan of that, and had some legendary matches. The Lish versus Belmont in a cage match is one of the all-time highlights of New England wrestling. So so there's definitely still advocates out there.
Absolutely. And just seeing all of the women that have came out of New England, and even the ones that you see on TV today, it's insane. I grew up watching Mercedes.
Yeah.
Never did I think she would be where she is today.
I know. She was one of obviously we are completely polar opposites on the moveset and body size scales. But she was still a huge inspiration for me, largely because I knew she was a local.
Yep.
And seeing, because she started coming around right about the time I debuted. So, well, she started coming around. She started becoming famous right around the time I debuted. So watching her just skyrocket, really inspired me.
And I feel like it inspired a lot of women around that time, because there was a lot of women that came up around that time too. I mean, some of them are still on the scene today, but unfortunately, a lot of them are not.
Yeah. There's been unfortunately with wrestling, there is a pretty high turnover. And one thing I've noticed, especially with the women, is that if you aren't completely married to wrestling, oftentimes your boyfriend's going to get in the way if he's not also in wrestling, and sometimes even if he is. But definitely, we've lost a lot of great wrestlers to men. um, excuse me. But there's definitely been a lot of women that have come and then they're like, all right, well, my boyfriend doesn't like this anymore. He wants me to stay at home, more or less. So I'm just gonna quietly fade out. And it's happened to some of my good friends, unfortunately. Like, I still talk to them here and there, but you know, it's just a matter of priorities. Like, for me, it's always been like, since I started training in 2013, it's been wrestling. Like, I definitely remember at one point having to make a Facebook status of like, I'm sorry, but wrestling is more important to me than your dick will ever be. Which got me in a lot of trouble with the person that happened to own the dick I was referencing. But it happens. But that is kind of the truth for a lot of women. You basically kind of have to choose between wrestling and having a significant other. And if you're lucky, you might get someone that understands. Odds are he's probably also going to be a wrestler if he understands, because there's just not a lot of guys outside of wrestling that are like, yeah, you can totally hop in a car with 4 dudes and drive down to New York and then go crash on another dude's couch, and then I'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah,
like that's just something that a lot of people can't handle.
So, what were some expectations that were placed on you that you didn't feel were fair?
Ooh, that's a good one. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd say they weren't fair, but there was definitely a lot of pressure on me to do things or listen to people, and they would tell me like, oh, you should do this, this, and this because you're a woman. And I'm like, but like, that's not who I am. That's not what I am comfortable doing. And you know, nothing expressly like sexual or anything, but like, you know, regarding the direction of my character, the direction of my move sets, how I held myself in the ring, all that sort of stuff. Like, people would have expectations because I was female that I should do XYZ. Excuse me.
You're good.
And hang on, let me grab a sip of water here because I have a tickle in my throat. That's better.
You're good.
But there was definitely this expectation of like a lot of men that would tell me, oh, you should do this. And I'd be like, well, why? Because that doesn't really make sense to me. And it was primarily just because like that's what they expected a woman to do. And I was like, but that's not me.
Did you ever feel like you had to shrink yourself or toughen up to fit in?
Yeah, that was a big one. There's been a lot of time because I am a very boisterous person. Once I get to know you, like initially, like I'm pretty shy initially, and then once I get to know you, I'm a very loud, boisterous person. I love cracking innuendos, and I definitely had to kind of reel that back in a lot, lest people get the wrong impression. You know, just because I say that's what she said joke doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to sleep with you, bro. But a lot of people were like, oh, she's, you know, she talks about sex all the time, she must be a slut. And I'm like, no, I just enjoy a good joke. So I definitely had to reel myself in there and kind of hold myself as a slightly classier lady than I like to portray on TV. And then I definitely had to prove myself over and over again, not only with the aforementioned proving to everyone that I wasn't in it for to hook up with the wrestlers, but also just that I could hang. There was definitely a lot of pressure to excel and prove myself, like in training classes and then in the ring itself. I've had the gamut of opponents, from people that were afraid to hit me because I'm female and having to handle that. Like they just like I remember one poor kid in training class, he just couldn't handle the fact that he was supposed to wrestle a girl. And we had to redo the drill probably about 15 times because he couldn't stop giggling and freezing because he was afraid to hit me. And I was like, dude, like, and he was pretty small. Like he was maybe my height and skinnier than I was. So I was like, you're not probably gonna hurt me. Like I'm a tough bitch. And he just couldn't handle it. And then I've also definitely have people that have tried to hurt me because of just based on the fact that like they don't like me and I'm a woman. So I've seen both sides of it.
So, who are some of the people that made you feel safe or supported when things got hard or when situations arose that made you feel uncomfortable?
Ooh, let's see. I mean, a lot of the people at RWA initially, and then also my trainers in general. Taven, when I was training with Taven, was spectacular. Like there was definitely some times that he would get on a rant and I'd have to look at him and be like, I remember where you started, bud. I remember
where you started too.
Yeah. But for the most part, he was super supportive. Always trying to make me do my best. Without beating me down to the point where I thought I couldn't do it. I knew he expected better of me if I screwed something up, but it wasn't the end of the world. He didn't berate me for it. It was just like, that sucked. And I'd be like, yeah, sure did. And he'd be like, let's try it again. So Taven was excellent. And obviously now I'm training with Elia and Bob at the lockup, and they're both also like they're very, very different trainers, but they're both excellent trainers. And they also make me feel really supported. But also just a lot of my friends. I basically could list all of the 2016 RWA roster. And then a lot of the people in NCW, names that come to mind are like Shady Shay Cash. He's always been a big supporter of mine and has always like we had a fantastic feud together at RWA. But he's always really been a good friend and someone that like because he's been around. He's younger than I am, but he's been around longer than I have. So like he's still someone that I would be like, hey Shay, what should I do about this? Nick Marchand has also been a good shoulder to lean on. Judge Logan Chambers, who I also had a fantastic feud with. Also known as Theodore J. Liftington. He has been my friend since pretty much he started coming around. That damn tickle. And then mentor types would be like Trips, or Trig of the OG, as he is now known, but I will always call him Trips.
He's always going to be Trips.
He's going to be Trips to me forever. But Trips was definitely when I first started training, he was co-training with JT. And he's always been a big, big person to push me and see what I can do without making me feel stupid. And for that, I owe him a lot, because there was definitely some times where I was like, I'm never going to get whatever it was. And he's like, no, you are. And we're going to work at it until you do.
Yeah, I learned my lesson with standing next to Trips watching matches, because he critiques the fuck out of matches. There was one time when I was working concessions at a promotion that I don't like to bring up, but we were standing at concessions and the whole time, oh, they fucked that up. That looked really bad. That looked terrible. And ever since, I've been like very critical, and I'm like, Trips has tainted me.
Yup.
I can't watch wrestling the same ever again. And I'm like, thanks, Trips.
Yup. I mean, once you get to a certain level in wrestling, that just automatically happens. Like, I'll even sometimes on TV, I'll be like, "Oh, that was a botch."
Yep.
And even if it's not a super obvious botch, I'll be like, "That wasn't supposed to happen." They saved it, barely. But
I mean, even not even being a wrestler, but just being around it for so long and being friends or dating people involved, you start picking up on a lot of things over the years. And
Yup.
it's so much easier now, especially watching AEW or WWE, and you're like, yeah, I don't think that was supposed to happen, but they kind of saved it, I think.
Yep. And it's so hard to, I honestly, like, I can barely watch wrestling by myself anymore, because I just pick the matches apart. I'm like always thinking about like, what were they thinking to make them do this or make them do that? And like, I'm always like not just critiquing the matches, but like trying to dissect the matches and be like, oh, that was a really cool callback to the thing they did before. I wonder if that was intentional or not. And then like it just becomes this whole thing. So I like watching wrestling with people so we can discuss it while we're watching it. Because otherwise I'm just like dissecting everything. And I'm like, I need to stop. I'm not enjoying this anymore.
So, what is something that fans don't understand about being a woman on the indie scene?
Well, I mean, there's obviously the obvious that just because I run around with no pants on doesn't mean that I'm trying to hook up with you. But I think another bigger thing, wish I could stop coughing, is the fact that like we're not only trying to entertain you, but I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. How do I put this right? We're here to entertain you. We're not here to date you. And also like there's a certain level of professionalism that we need to maintain, and some fans don't quite get that. Like they see me every month, every other week, maybe sometimes every week, depending on how many shows I'm working. And they develop a familiarity with us, and it's like one thing to be friendly, but it's another thing to be a little too friendly. And then also I just would really like them to understand how hard we work to entertain people. It's definitely it's a full-time thing. If I'm not working my day job, I'm in the gym, I'm at training, I'm at shows I'm not booked on to try and develop relationships with. And like some fans will be like, wanting to just chat, even if they don't have any nefarious things. They just want to talk. And they're like, oh, she's pretty, I want to talk to her. And yeah, and it's like,
I'm guilty of that.
it's like, buddy, I can't be, how's your day? Busy. Like, I can't be making small talk. Like, if you have something to say, absolutely send me a message. But if it's just like, hey, how's your day going? I'm like, I don't have time to answer that.
All right, so I want to talk about some of the moments that stayed with you, not necessarily your biggest matches, but just ones that still carry with you. So, what is a match where you truly felt seen for the first time?
Ooh. I mean, this all goes back to RWA. It keeps going back to RWA, but that's where I got my start. So I would say The first time I really felt seen and appreciated for who I was as a wrestler was probably, I had a match with just Alex, and it was at the time it was a good match, and I remember getting in the back and everyone be like, "Hey, that was a really good match," and it was the first time that I genuinely believed them. And that was definitely a turning point. And then also the matches I've had with Judge Logan Chambers. We had a feud at RWA that really helped push me and make me progress. Another feud I had was with Riot Kellen Thomas. That feud was fantastic. The first time I ever took a kendo stick. Also the last time I ever took a kendo stick. For now. I'm sure I'll take one eventually before I retire, but just those matches, and then the matches I had with Shay. When I won the Hype Championship at RWA, that was it was right before the world ended in 2020, so I was very disappointed that like my title reign was cut very, very short. Well, it was a very long reign. It was just it couldn't do anything for a year. But the matches I had with Shay around the Hype Championship were some of the best matches I've ever had. I really pushed myself. I pushed my limits, and we had bangers. We genuinely had bangers. If you haven't seen the match just prior to me winning the belt, it was the match we had in January of 2020. We were supposed to have a match in December, and he got sick. And then January we had a match, and it went to a time limit draw, literally seconds before, because the Hype Championship had to be won in 10 minutes or less. And literally, I got my arm over him 1, 2 times up. It was mind-blowingly perfect. I that might be probably my favorite match I've ever had. So that's saying something.
So, what is a moment that hit you emotionally more than physically?
Ooh, a moment that hit me emotionally. I've had a lot of those. There's been a lot of it runs the gamut. I still remember the last match I had during my feud with Judge. At that point, I was helping T a lot with RWA, and we ended up getting into a screaming match before the show. And I knew I was done with RWA at that point. This is 2018. And I remember going out there, and I was like crying before the match. I went out, we locked up, and went, "Judge, I forgot everything. You're going to have to get me through this." And he did. And then I got in the back, collapsed sobbing, and packed my stuff, left for a year. And then we finally worked our stuff out. T and I. And then, so that being like the lowest point, and then some emotional highs. I mean, just, winning the NCW Women's Championship was a huge, huge moment for me. And that was just very recently. Another one at NCW was the first match I had after my father passed away. That was a very emotional match for me because my dad would come and watch me wrestle, at least back at RWA shows. And so it was a big deal to go into wrestling. I had tape on my arm that said Dad on it. And I remember Delilah Hayden coming out after the match and giving me a big hug, and I was literally just crying. And that was a very difficult but sweet moment for me.
When you think about some of these moments now, what are like the most prominent feelings that come up for you?
I'd say pride. Pride is like just the fact that I went from who I was to who I am now. And all those stops in between, every match has been a stop on the train state, has been a train station in the route of life. And I'm very proud of what I've done and the things that I've accomplished. Even the failures, I'm proud of because I learned from them. So if, the aforementioned Judge Logan Chambers match where I forgot everything, we still went out there. We still had a pretty damn good match, even though I was basically crying in the ring. And then, the highs of winning the Hype Championship, the highs of winning the House of Bricks Women's Championship, the lows of trying to have two girls wrestle for one cup at House of Bricks before the Women's Championship existed. Yeah, that was a thing. That's a great story. I actually ended up putting that in a promo at one point because I was the heel at that point. So I remember we were having a TLC match and we realized we needed something to wrestle for the TLC match. So they decided we wrestled for a cup, and so it was the Women's Championship Cup. And I remember we cut a promo where I took a hammer to it and I just destroyed it. And mid destroying this cup, I'm like, whose idea was it to have two girls wrestling for one cup? And that made it to air, and the reaction was exactly what I wanted it to be.
So if you could relive one match just to feel it again, what match would it be?
Right now, there are two matches that come to mind. Actually, three matches that come to mind. The first would be the first match I had at Lucky Pro Wrestling against Davey Ann. That was one of the best matches I'd had. That was the best match I had up until that point. And for a while afterwards. That was a really good match, and it really helped me level up and taught me a lot. And it was just a huge deal because at the time, like, DVN was just such an inspiration to me. She was this, now she's a bodybuilder, but at the time she wasn't small. She wasn't fat, but she wasn't small. She was a thick chick, and she was a boss bitch, and she was everything I wanted to be. So to be able to hold my own with her was a really big deal for me. And then chronologically, the next match would be the aforementioned 10-minute draw match. That match really, I mean, I almost killed Shay, but other than that, it was a really good match. Superplexes, don't do them. Or do them, but don't slip.
As Mike Grossa says, if he dies, he dies.
That's kind of what we ended up doing. We both started slipping on the top rope. We're like, fuck it. We're doing this. And we did the superplex. And my shoulder hasn't been the same since, and I thought I dropped him on his head. Oh. He lived, obviously, but it was scary. But just the emotions in the room when we had that match, as much as winning the Hype Championship, that match was good. It was unfortunately on, it was Leap of Faith because it was on the Leap Day. So I only get to relive it in my Facebook memories every 4 years. But it was, that match was good. That match was really good too. But I still think the match we had prior to it was better. And then also, most recently, just winning the Women's Championship at NCW against Selena. That match was everything I wanted it to be. So that was a really big moment for me.
So, of those three moments, what do you think those changed for you going forward in your career?
Well, I can definitely tell you that the Davian match I leveled up. The Shea match, I believed in myself. That was a really big moment. Because at that point I was kind of on my A game, and I realized I was on my A game for those matches. And I still think those are some of the best matches I have ever and may ever put out. Like, I've had good matches since, but those matches really, like, there's something to be said for inherently trusting your opponent. Um and then obviously winning the women's championship at NCW really helped me feel less about the belt and more about the overall match. Again, trusting my opponent. Selena Heke is absolutely wonderful. We beat the crap out of each other, and then we go in the back and we hug it out, and it's great. But it's nice. Like, I went into that match having like a bunch of ideas. We ended up doing absolutely none of them. But I definitely am really proud of that match. There's only one thing I would have done differently, that being the crossbody. But other than that, everything was what I wanted it to be in that match, and that made me feel like I have the confidence in myself that I can do this. And I've had, since that, I've had pretty much nonstop good matches. So I'm pretty proud of that.
How do you feel that these moments shaped you not only as a wrestler, but as a woman?
Oh, I like the way you phrased that. So these moments definitely have inspired, obviously confidence is kind of the common thread there. But not only as a wrestler, but as a woman in general, I have more confidence in myself. I put myself out there obviously a lot, because not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, the whole nine. I'm connecting with people, I'm interacting with people, and I've had to kind of shed my protective little shell and really let myself be a bit vulnerable. And that's something that's really hard to do as a woman, because being vulnerable is really tough as a woman. I mean, it's tough as a man too, but if you're vulnerable as a woman, you might get, predatory people. So you have to be really kind of cautious. And I have to walk that line between being open with people and connecting with them and not inviting them a little too much. So I definitely think it's increased my confidence a lot, that I'm able to approach people on the street even and just be like, strike up a conversation, which is something I never would have thought I would do in a million years before I started wrestling. And now I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I mean, obviously I can think of some worse things, but, um, you know, as long as I feel safe in a place physically, then I can kind of open up and interact with people and be myself.
So, what insecurity still follows you in the ring?
A lot of them. There's so many. I will say one of the hardest things for me right now is physical appearance. Um, Wrestling is a very aesthetic kind of industry, and I am not in my prime shape. I'm in a shape. I can do the things. Liz is a shape, but I am not in the shape that I want to be when I look at myself in the mirror. And also I'm not, I, it's not that I'm not, that's the wrong way of phrasing it. I see so many, you know, especially with me being older now it's a little hard because I see so many young women that are just getting in, they're dainty little things, and which is awesome for them. And also it, with me being who I am, I can usually throw them around like rag dolls, which is kind of fun. But there is that whole like, I've literally been in matches where I'm wrestling someone and they are an absolute asshole, not in real life probably, but like in the ring, they're an absolute asshole. And people are cheering for them because they're prettier than I am. And I'm like, okay. And I've literally heard people say that. I'm cheering for her because she's pretty. And I'm like, thanks, bud. So that kind of is a huge ego blow when that happens. And then there's always the insecurities of, am I good enough? What can I do to improve? But like, am I ever going to be as good as insert name here? There's always that fear that like, I mean, I've gotten to the point now where I know I don't suck as a wrestler. I'm not the shits. But I know I'm never going to be the best female wrestler in the world. That's just not my destiny, and that's okay.
So I want to get a little bit more into kind of outside of the ring stuff. So what is a fan interaction that reminded you of why doing this matters?
I will always go back to Michaela, little Michaela, who, if some people might not know Michaela, she's been watching wrestling since she was very small. I think she started coming around at 4, maybe 3 years old. Her mom, Virginia's been a longtime wrestling fan. And so Michaela, I remember there's a picture, one of my favorite pictures of me as a wrestler. It was one of my early NCW shows, and she's there, and we're both, throwing up our muscles. And I think at that point she was 4 years old, maybe 5, probably 4. And I've watched her grow up, and that is something that really, really is awesome. And reminds me why I do this, because at the end of the day, my biggest motivation is to make little girls look at me and go, it's cool to be strong. That's been one of my big things. Like, it doesn't matter what size your body is. You can be thick, you can be thin. But as long as you're strong and powerful, like, be it physically or emotionally and mentally, that is a cool thing. You don't need to shrink yourself to be what others think you should be.
So what is a backstage moment that meant more to you than a crowd reaction?
There's been plenty. I mean, I'm trying to think of just one. And there's so many memories. But I mean, just anyone saying that they're proud of me has been, and that's happened plenty of times, but I've gotten the back. Most recently I had a match at Focus Pro against Riley O'Neill, who, as most people know, is one of my best friends. And it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was a great match. The crowd sure thought so.
I was there for it. It was a great match.
We had a blast, even though he did slap the dog shit out of my ear and blow out my eardrum. I will never let him forget. But we got in the back, and I remember Brian Bayside coming up and be like, yo, that was what I was looking for. And I just felt accomplished, like, especially because it was, it was a hard scenario. I was the heel, Riley was the baby face, and it's very hard to do a heel female without fans turning on you when she's wrestling a guy. So the fact that we managed to get to the point where I didn't hear anyone booing when he won. I heard just a huge pop, and I was like, I remember sailing away from that and going, we did it. And then getting that acknowledgement from Brian meant a lot.
And I had never seen Riley before either. So seeing that you had came out as a heel, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get behind this kid. And then he came out doing a Day to Remember song. And I was like, all right, that's how you get me behind you.
Yep. Oh, man. Yeah, no,
So-
he's getting real good. I'm proud of him.
So, what helps calm you down before you walk through the curtain?
So everyone has their little rituals. My personal ritual is so usually what I'll do is like I'm kind of stretching before, like, while the build up to my music plays. One thing I often do is like I kind of crack my ankles. I'll like put my foot on point and twist my ankles around to just keep them loose. And like kind of switch back and forth, and that's just like my signal to my body, like it's go time. And then right before the music drops, I'll give myself a couple hits to the chest, a slap across the face to know it's go time, and then it's out. And that is my little ritual. And if I think I've only not done that once, and it threw me all off that I didn't. It's a weird thing, like that slap to the face is like, all right, it's time to hurt and it's time to give some pain, so let's go.
So, looking ahead, what do you feel that you are most proud of surviving in this business?
I'm proud of surviving this business. This business is a business that chews you up and spits you out. I almost haven't survived this business at some points. I've always dealt a lot with depression and suicidal ideation, and that's something that's been my whole life. My first suicide note was when I was 9 years old. Like it's a thing. Dear diary, no one cares anymore. Date of death and a blank line. And thankfully, I never filled that line out. But that was so that was the thing that I've had to deal with, where like I've hit some real low lows in wrestling. And it's pushed me pretty close to the edge. But I've also hit some really high highs in wrestling, and it's pulled me away from the edge. So it's a very volatile industry. You know, I've made friends, I've lost friends, and all of that has pushed me one way or the other. Everything changes all the time. One day I'm getting 3 bookings in a day and everything's coming up me. And then the next day I'm like, I screw something up at practice and I'm like, I shouldn't even do this. I shouldn't do this. I'm terrible. So to be able to live with those highs and those lows and still keep kicking and still keep doing it, that is a huge deal for me.
What is something that you still want to prove to this business?
I don't know how much more I have to truly prove, other than the fact that I can still go, which is more something that I'm proving to myself than to the business. But more so, I want to give back to the business at this point. In March, it'll be 10 years that I've been wrestling actively on the independent scene. And for me, I've reached the point where I just want to leave wrestling better than where I found it. So I want to help others improve. I want to see the future generations of wrestlers do well. My one next big goal, assuming I can find a building, would be to open a professional wrestling school in Rhode Island. I will not be the head trainer. Thank you very much. But I do have a business degree, so I would like to be handling the stuff in the back end. I can definitely help teach some fundamentals. And overall, I want to give back at this point.
So that's all the beefy questions I got for you.
All right.
But I do like to throw in some personality questions.
All
And
right.
these are the most important questions. So strap on in.
All right. Strapping in.
So we are going on a road trip, but we are only allowed to listen to 5 bands or artists. Who are we listening to?
Ah, yeah. All right. So we are listening to my current obsession, Wage War. Absolutely love Wage War. And then I gotta throw it out to Korn. We're gonna jam to some Korn. Because that has been, I almost got a Korn tattoo. That's how much I loved Korn. And then we're gonna take a left turn, and then we're gonna throw some Weekend in that.
Okay.
I do really love the Weekend. I don't know what it is about his music. So at least there's two more. Ooh, I gotta pick. I'm trying to think of some things that might surprise people. Oh yeah, can't go without a little Combi Christ. Throwing it back to my goth roots, my goth industrial roots. And the last one's tough. The last one, I don't know, who am I really? I'm really enjoying. It's not Make Them Suffer. What's the other one? I can't remember their name right now. We'll go with Make Them Suffer. We'll throw that one there. Oh, Slaughter to Prevail. There we go. I'll switch it up and go Slaughter to Prevail.
All right. So for anyone that doesn't know you, you are definitely a baking extraordinaire.
Yes.
And I had to throw this question in there. So if you were a sweet, a baked good, a pastry, whatever it may be, what would you be?
Ooh, this is probably the most fun question I've ever been asked. I feel like it's definitely something filled, a filled pastry of some sort. The only question is, I'm gonna go with a Boston cream donut. I'm gonna go with a Boston cream donut. There's the cream filling.
I don't like Boston cream, but I like the chocolate part.
Yeah. We could also go with I know my local donut shop just launched their donut of the month, which is a strawberry jelly filled chocolate top, so a chocolate dipped strawberry donut. So we might go with that one too. That one sounds pretty bitchin'. I'm definitely, the next time I go to my chiropractor, they're around the corner from my chiropractor, I am absolutely getting one of those. I'm making it fit my macros.
So another thing that others might not know about you is we dabble in a little bit of karaoke.
Oh, we sure do.
So what is your current go-to karaoke song?
So right now, my favorite song to sing, depending on the crowd, I like to try and match my songs to the crowd. So if I'm in a bar full of old people, I'm not going to bust this out. But my heel entrance theme, Love Bites by Hailstorm, I do an absolutely banging rendition of that. If I am in a bar with a bunch of old people, I'll go with my old favorite, Hotel California.
I've heard both. Both are fantastic. Yeah. What was my next one? All right. So you are getting the opportunity of a lifetime, and any fast food establishment is offering you the Isana value meal. Ooh. So what fast food joint are we going to, and what does this meal consist of?
So we're going to Taco Bell.
Hell
much to everyone's chagrin, or at least the chagrin of their intestines, but and certainly the chagrin of their roommates. But we're definitely going to Taco Bell. Taco Bell is my guilty pleasure. And we are getting either 2 soft taco supremes with a side of cheesy fiesta potatoes, or a chalupa supreme with chicken chalupa supreme with a side of cheesy fiesta potatoes.
And what's the drink?
Oh, well, I mean, that's got to be the Baja Blast. Although I haven't tried the new Baja Blast yet, the
The
purple
purple
one.
one? I haven't either.
I have not tried that yet, and I'm a sucker for anything limited edition. So, you know, when Oreo puts out their new flavors, I'm Johnny on the spot getting them. When Lay's was doing those the like 3 flavors and then only one can last.
Yeah.
Oh, I was tearing places apart to get those. So I love a limited edition, any flavor, anything. So I'm really, it might end up being that one. Honestly, in a perfect world, it would be the pitch black Mountain Dew that they had way back in the day, that grape one. That was probably the best Mountain Dew I've ever had.
All right. And the last little personality question I have. You are booked for a show, but they only have access to Disney or Nickelodeon music. What is your new entrance song?
Oh, okay. All right. There's options there. Right now I'd say my favorite Disney movie is Moana.
Okay.
So, it might be a song that you've probably heard at karaoke
several times.
Yeah. I don't even know what it's properly called. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but the one she sings about I'm blanking right now. My brain just went the one she sings when she's about to leave the island. Or she's debating leaving the island for the first time. I've been sitting at the edge of the water.
Okay, how far I'll go.
I can remember. Yeah, how far I'll go. There we go.
Yeah.
And that one could be pretty good. Yeah, we'll go with that one.
All right. And I have one last segment I like to call Promo Roulette.
All right. I was enjoying that.
That's great music. I'm never going to get over that. I love that music. So, Promo Roulette is a segment where you are to shoot a promo on either the previous week's guest who gave you the item, inspired off of the item, or a promo on the item itself. So, last week's guest, Flying Ryan O'Neill, picked a pool noodle. So you can shoot a pool noodle inspired promo on Ryan, or you can shoot a promo on a pool noodle itself.
Ooh, all right. Let me gather myself here. What's the direction I want to go with on this? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Suplex Sweetheart Isana here. And this week, I have one heck of an opponent in a pool noodle. I'm not worried about you, Noodle. You're floppy. You can't even stand up. You're never going to be able to knock me down. I am stronger than you. I'm more powerful than you. I'm just bigger. It's going to be 1, 2, 3. Pool noodle, back in the pool.
Well, there we go. And you now get to pick any random item for our guest for next week.
Any random item for a guest for next week. I'm looking around my room. I do actually have a pool noodle over there that I use for costumes. So
and I will give you a hint at who this guest for next week is, because it is someone you know.
Oh, I would hope so.
It is someone you have mentioned throughout this past hour and 20 minutes.
All right.
And it is, I guess I can go with saying a former female from NCW at this point.
Okay.
I think her husband or ex-husband or wherever that storyline's going is still involved, though.
Ah, yes. All right. That does help a little bit. All right. I am going to go with there's so many options here. The WWE Divas Championship belt.
All right. So, with that being said, the person who will be shooting a promo on the WWE Divas Championship belt is none other than Delilah Hayden.
Yeah.
So we will be back with her next week around 4:35 o'clock. But that is everything I have for you. So thank you so much for joining us this week, Isana.
You're very welcome. This was super fun.
I'm glad you took the time out to join us. That is everything I have for you guys at home as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. And we will be back next week around 4:35 o'clock with Delilah Hayden. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.
Yeah.